Do you have any other things like self-check questions or other things that have you've seen in your discernment process, how it's changed from then to where you're at now?
The things that you say yes to, especially like vocationally, does it take away from something that I feel like the Lord has called me to? The the mental capacity, the time, the energy. And so that's something that I I ask myself a lot. And I make sure that I'm in community. I think during those early adolescent years, while reached out to people, I was pretty alone through a lot of this decision making process, which is, I think it's needed some alone time to just sit before the Lord and tell him about it. But also, like, I have this group of mentors and people that I trust, and I run things by them. I think it's in Proverbs, right, with the counsel of many. I can't quote it, but
In an abundance of counselors, there is safety.
it's just a really big check for me. I'm I'm grateful that I have it, and I'm gonna use it if I have it. So that's a huge thing.
And just to like build on that a little bit, it's interesting how you can be surrounded by community and yet no one knows you and no one knows your process. Like you have to intentionally share that. Like you can be surrounded by a bunch of great people, great church, great whoever, but unless you're actually being transparent and sharing that with people, uh, you'll feel surrounded and still feel like no one really knows you, and then no one's actually giving you that counsel.
Yeah, I'm gonna say something about that too. The mentors and the people that are within that circle that I reach out to, we're aligned on that one thing. They fear God and they love God, and they're they know that all the decisions I'm making, they know like my endpoint because it's the same as their endpoint. How are we gonna stand before God? And that gives me a little bit of like peace too, because it's like the core of who I am and what I'm living for, they see it too. That's why when I was going through counseling that wasn't Christian counseling, it was really hard to share outside of like, it was hard to share my faith because of the most important foundation of who I am. They just don't understand it. And then when I switched to Christian counselor, it was so much easier to talk about because my they're understanding where I was coming from and my end goal with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. Any other guiding principles or anything when it comes to your discernment process?
Sometimes you just gotta do things. You can have a lot of theories in your head and ideas of what a decision will be, but you really don't know until you try it. And I mean, hopefully, you trying it doesn't lock you in to this huge commitment. But if you're able to try something, try it.
I love what you said in your recent podcast with Johnny Kang. He asked you, "How do you learn?" And your first answer was by failing. You didn't even say by trying or by doing, or by reading or something. Like you just literally said by failing.
Yeah. It's like when you take a test and you're reviewing the answers, you're gonna review the ones that you failed, but you don't necessarily review the ones that you got correct. But sometimes you have to review the ones you got correct too, because that could have been off a whim or like a lucky guess. But yeah, like the ones, the stuff that's stuck the most with me is like when I fail.